Right, so I'm Vince, and I'm going to be talking to you about a module that I put together with Neil and everyone else of his team's help last year. And then Alex, sat over there, is one of the students who will hopefully tell you his perspective. I'm a mathematician, and I think that's a hard thing to define for a lot of people. So I don't know how well you can see this picture, but that's what I think I do. I think it's the coolest job in the world. I love being able to just mess around with mathematics. My mum thinks I do magic. I have no friends. Most people think my job has something to do with numbers. I can't remember the last time I had to deal with a number. I actually spend most of my time in meetings, dreaming of that. But thinking about what a mathematician is obviously very important from an educator's point of view. So what do we want our mathematicians to be when they leave the university? And what does it mean to be a mathematician? And this is something that we talked about a while about, I don't know, a year ago or so, as Rob, who's our Director of Learning and Teaching, sat there, we discussed this. And I'll come back to that, sorry. And we talked about the fact that a modern mathematician must know how to write code, must know how to write computer code. Perhaps 50 years ago, you could do all of mathematics with a pen and a paper. Maybe 20 years ago, you'd realize, right, some of us need to use code. The modern mathematician, whether or not they're a very pure mathematician or an extremely applied mathematician, will need to write code. And ultimately, a lot of our graduates will not be doing this all day, writing super code, doing that. They will be in meetings where they have to just calculate using some spreadsheet or something. So a basic level of computation is needed. And that's another thing I love doing, is I love writing code, but I also love teaching because I find teaching very fun. And someone who said this extremely well, I don't know who was at the HEA conference in Edinburgh, Sue Rigby kind of just said when she gave her opening address, was like, we got to remember that we should we can choose how we teach. We are in control when we teach, and so why not do it in a fun way? And that's something that I try and get across to my students. Alex might disagree with me, but teaching is fun, learning is fun. I mean, I'm a bit of a learning addict. I constantly have to stop trying to learn new things because I find it very addictive and fun. And this is what I'm going to talk about, is the module I put together last year. I don't know how well you can see that picture. Can you see like three triangles with some numbers some lines going through it? Yeah. There's a really good research article by Freeman and some colleagues that looks at a meta-analysis of active learning techniques. And by active learning techniques, in other words, something that's not this, where I'm just speaking to you, checking your emails, you're kind of listening. Oh, sorry. I was checking my emails during yours, so I actually felt good about that. But an active learning is something where the students have to do something, right? And not just sit and hope everything happens towards the end. And the idea is that if you go through Bloom's taxonomy, the theory behind this is that if you go through Bloom's taxonomy, the contact time you spend with a student, you can maybe get the base of the taxonomy, so I can tell them about the stuff. And then the student has to go away and get a comprehension themselves. This is all the theory, right? I happen to be a believer of this theory, but I'm not assuming everyone is. But an active learning technique, the idea is, well, the students can do that boring bit, can do the bit by themselves of just finding out the content. And then it's with myself or with someone else or in a different environment that they can maybe go to the deeper levels of the taxonomy. And that's often referred to as a flipped classroom, as one approach to an active learning. And Freeman has got a beautiful meta-analysis of loads of studies that actually show that students do better in it. It comes back to what you were saying earlier on about they might not say they like it as much, but that's something I've always got with what students want and what students need is not always the same thing. So this is what the module looks like. It's a long, thin module over 2 terms, 2 semesters. And in the first semester, students get the content. they learn how to code. And so some of these students have got into university, basically enjoyed differentiation, basically enjoyed addition, and thought addition's pretty nice, I like these numbers. And then all of a sudden, some guy with a weird accent is telling them, right, you need to learn how to write code now, okay? So this doesn't always go down too easily in the first couple of weeks. But eventually they break. Don't record that. Eventually they break, and a lot of them do come around and learn to code and get the importance of coding. And so that all happens in a flipped framework, where students learn by themselves. I've got a whole bunch of resources and scaffolding available to them, and then they have some contact time with me where I address the difficulties. Those are the theory. Now, the way that's assessed, and I'm getting towards entrepreneurship, the way that's assessed is that the initial assessment is just a brutal class test. Can you do this, is basically what it is, and can you do this specific thing that I'm telling you you need to learn how to do, all right? That's the class test. Then the second piece of assessment is, okay, I want you to go write about something cool. Go write about something that I know nothing about. Alex used as much computer power as he could to write about fractals and broke a server that we had. A student wrote about snakes and ladders, and this is really cool because they're going and learning specific mathematical and coding techniques that I would never suggest all the students in the class have to learn. They're figuring out a problem they want to tackle, and they're going to learn what they need to learn. Then when stuff gets really interesting is the second half, and this is when all my students form groups of 4 companies, and they have an initial lecture with myself and Neil, who really helps with this part, where we tell them what a company is. We tell them that they need a secretary, that the secretary is the only person I want to have contact with, and then we basically say, right, in 3 weeks' time, you're writing a project proposal where you're going to tell me what you're planning to work on. At that point, I give them some feedback of, yeah, that sounds good. Oh, if you're going to be doing this, maybe look at this piece of software or something similar. Then in 6 weeks' time, so 3 weeks after that, there's a grand council meeting where they all have a 1-minute presentation to everybody else. And this comes together with some sort of theoretics of social learning, but also gives the students an idea to know what everyone else is doing. And it's a really fun session. And the final thing is a group presentation, and that's basically where the bulk of the assessment is. And the first part of the term, where they're learning that content, looks like that. So the first part of the year, where they're just learning how to code, looks like that. Does anyone know why I like that photo? Sorry?
Because they're in groups.
Yeah, that's not my favorite part of the photo. I'm not in it. That's exactly right, okay? I'm not in that photo, and that's exactly how this class works, is I was basically standing there at the back, students were helping each other and talking. There's something else very cool about this photo that's a harder one to notice. Unless Alex stood up and turned around. Alex is in that photo. Alex did this module last year. This is a photo I took this year. And so now what I'm doing is I'm using students who did the module last year to help tutor this year. And kind of trying to basically remove myself from the process as much as possible. I am very strict with the student tutors as well, though. I kind of tell them that they can't be too helpful either, because I really want the students who are learning to struggle. And so that's how the left part works. And now the right part. So students have gone away, they've learned some new tools, and I'm basically telling them, okay, when in 3 years' time you graduate, you're going to learn a lot of mathematics. You're going to know a lot about the theoretics of how sequences converge, right? How shapes tessellate, and all these things that look really awesome in books and on pictures, but you're going to have to use that in real life. And now with these first 11 weeks, you've got some tools that will allow you to use mathematics in real life. And the first part of what makes this work is that I basically have very little contact time with the students, and I tell them, I expect you to have meetings. I expect you to have meetings, and the secretary must write up minutes for these meetings. They have a very specific role. And at the very end of the week, I tell them, I expect you guys to meet twice a week and to send me those minutes. And so every Thursday, I have all this collection of minutes, and I just go through them. I tell them to write 3 bullet points, because I don't want to write too much, and a lot of the time, I get 3 bullet points. In fact, Alex's meeting notes was always the most enjoyable for me to read, because they were about a sentence that basically said, we know what we're doing, everything is fine. And they were right. But I had some people who would write 3 pages of minutes, and that was also great. But these minutes, it took me about 20 minutes to go through the 40 groups that I had. This is taught to all our first year. To go through the 40 groups I had and be able to address. It also made sure students just didn't disappear. And so every week I'd say, right, I still haven't had minutes from these groups, come and speak to me. It also allowed me to identify problems. Sometimes group dynamics had problems and try and address those. So those minutes, although they were just a little idea of how do I make students not just do nothing for 11 weeks, I think are actually what really make this module work, because I do have some feedback with them and they get some feedback from me. And it's also quite entertaining because I'm like, oh wow, these students are talking about building an app. Well, I should tell them about this piece of software. A piece of software that I wouldn't suggest I need to teach every student, but those 4 students do need to learn. And that's where things get very personal, and I think that's also a strength. That's a photo of the Grand Council. The person who took the photo decided to get very fancy with photo editing, so it's not as clear as it could be. But basically all the students are there. The project managers for all the companies go through and they talk for just under a minute, and I tell them you have a minute, and I'm sat there with a timer and I basically yell out saying, yeah, you're done. And they basically push each other off because they're eating too much of the time. And it's actually really entertaining. If nothing else, from a pedagogic point of view, I can say it achieves social learning and all sorts of nonsense with fancy words like that. But it's just lots of fun. I find that really fun. Don't tape that. And then at the very end, we have the presentations. So here's one team. They built a website called Fight Club. If I have time and if it loads, I'll show it. Here's another team. And assuming the sound is working in this room, I'll show a little video they put together. They built a tool that allowed you to win at blackjack. And by win, I mean cheat. So I was very careful to say, because they actually put it up on the web, and I was like, I don't want my name anywhere near that. So this group built an okay little tool that was quite neat. But the best part was that that guy on the left came in with a guitar for his pitch. So that was entertaining. And these guys, they did something very clever. They actually got the best mark of the year. I realize the photo's not that great. They built an app, so a mobile phone app that they got working, which from a technical point of view, to go from having never coded to in basically 22 weeks be able to code up an app, I was impressed. Whilst, learning about analysis and stuff. And what their app was a teaching app. It was, we're going to teach mathematics. Now, a large majority of all the projects were going to teach mathematics, because obviously that's right there, right? That's what they're doing. It's a low effort to make that entrepreneurial step of that's the idea we're going to address. A lot of people did it very well. They thought about different things, who's it for? How are we going to monetize? What's the point? What do we need to do? And that did work very well. But to be honest, I was kind of bored by those ones by the end. So people who did interesting stuff was I was always very thankful for. So they came in teaching one. I was like, oh, here we go. But they were very clever. They went. One of the big problems with weakness of mathematics in kids nowadays is not that they can't do mathematics. That's not the source of the problem. That is the problem. A lot of the time it's because their parents can't do mathematics, and their parents have that phobia of mathematics. So when students say, oh mom, I got math homework, parents just go, oh, I can't do mathematics. That horrible thing that sends shivers down a mathematician's soul when people say, I can't do math. Because whoever's thinking that, you're wrong. You can. But it's that negative perception of mathematics that gets passed through the generations, right? And so you'd almost say, well, if you can't do mathematics, then just don't say it to your kids. Or maybe you should get better at mathematics and help their kids. So what they did was they built an app that was targeted at parents to help them be able to see the mathematics that their kids would be doing at various age groups and stuff. So that was very clever. They actually spoke with Welsh government about the potential to take it further and stuff. I don't think it has, but they did very well, and they actually got an award from Neil's team to work on it some more over the summer. Let me see if this loads up. It's a website that takes a while to load, so let me just move on. Now, this is the promotional video that Black Hack put together. which was in no way requested. I basically tell them, go do something cool that has something to do with code and mathematics, and think about the entrepreneurial consequences of what you're doing. Right, so they came in after I'd seen like 2 okay-ish teaching presentations, and they just pressed play on that, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. So that was really cool, and completely, going to an extra level that I don't think any other of the students, I'd expect them to do that or learn how to do that. And I was also quite impressed, to be honest. I thought that was actually really good. Again, I say it every time I present this, and I don't know Jay's Twitter handle, so I apologize. But for the whole team, this module I think works quite well. I'm really happy with it, and it would not be possible without the help that Neil and his team has given me, so I'm always very thankful for that. Now, to just reflect on this is in the middle of running for the second year. Already made a couple of changes to that first half, and now going to the second half. 3 little takeaways that I think about embedding this thing in a mathematics course. And I think the particular difficulty about the mathematics course is that less so nowadays, actually. I think our students are beginning to realize that they can't just add numbers together for the rest of their lives. But a lot of them hope they can. And I think they go to university to study mathematics because they can't do anything else. That's why I'm here. I went to study mathematics because I liked mathematics. What did I want to do with that was to study more mathematics, and that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm a bad example, but I think that relates to the fact that sometimes students are just a bit maybe averse to it. That, oh, why do I have to do this? And it just takes a little bit of time for them to realize, wow, and a lot of students actually have spoken to me and said, no, this was really interesting and I enjoyed doing this. Involvement, and by involvement I mean involving them in the whole pedagogic process of why they're learning like they're learning, why is it structured like it's structured, and just talking to them and having that open discussion I think is a helpful thing to do, and telling them why they're learning these skills and why they're put into these opportunities. And these are opportunities to say, right, direct yourselves, go think of something, go do something, go solve a problem. And these are opportunities, and I think involving the students with the why of that is important. Enthusiasm, a lot of the stuff they did I think is cool, and I think one must be enthusiastic, and I think they certainly get that from Neil when he comes and speaks to them. And transparency. And by transparency I don't mean what I was talking about with regards to involvement. By transparency I mean transparency as to the fact that what this is asking them to do is difficult. It is stressful. It's if you've been writing essays, adding numbers together for the past 10 years, that's a comfort zone. So I think being transparent about you're going to be thrown into the deep end here. This is going to be uncomfortable. I think that's important. So, and by transparent I mean not just letting them know that that's a fact, so they're not surprised by it. So that if a particular individual is like, wow, this is difficult, no, just say, yeah, this is difficult. It's difficult for everybody. I don't think I have time for that, so I'll leave it there because I've got another student to speak anyway. At which point I'll pass over to Alex, who will Say what you think.
So yeah, my name's Alex. I'm in my second year doing, undergraduate maths. Did I enjoy Vincent's module? I have to say I loved it, especially in the second semester. I lived to read it. All my other modules was, oh, I gotta go and do work now, have I? Oh, okay. And with his learnings, the way he's teaching it, a lot of the maths is very hands-on anyway. You can't get anywhere without actually physically doing it. But in a lecture, you're watching the lecturer and he's doing the maths, and then afterwards you have to sort of try and copy what he did. If you think about, Carpenter and his apprentice, you're watching him and he's sculpting this marvellous bowl, and then you have to go and try and mimic that, and maybe you'll get an okay bowl at the end. Vince, he goes over there's lots of tools to do it. And so then you have to figure it out for yourself, and you'll make mistakes, and it'll all be terribly wrong, but then in the end you'll know the tools. And then once you know the tools, you can do whatever with it. So in the second semester, we had to form a company. We had four members. Somehow I got thrust in a project lead. Not sure how that happened. And we thought, right guys, what are we doing? And we had no idea. And then one guy, we were about to give up, we got nothing. He said, oh, what about postal packaging? And we thought, what do you mean? Oh, well, how do you, wrap it so that it's safe and it's not going to get broken? Well, within 5 minutes, we had a system that was going to tell you what's the best route for all these different places to deliver your packages on time, where to make the folds and the creases, where to stick the sellotape. You're going to have a real-time smartphone app that updated for traffic, and pointed at the back of the van, and show, right, this box goes there, that box goes there, everything. So obviously, you can do all that in 8 weeks. So, what are we going to do? What are we going to pick? Well, a couple of guys in our group did decision maths in A-level, which covered what's known as the travelling salesman problem, which was, what's the best route from A to B to G to Z to F. Right, and we had some sort of idea about how we would go about doing it in code. So we thought, great, we'll go with that. So, we already cut out a load of the stuff that we weren't going to get done, but then that in itself was still a big project, because in the end we ended up developing 2 programs. One that made it all look pretty, and then one that actually made it work. I got stuck with the one that made it work, and everybody else was making it look pretty. Not so much fun. But then, there's the communication in there. You've got to, I have the data, then you've got to present it. What format do they want it in? So we're constantly going back and forth, oh no, well I want 4 ints and a string and a doohickey round the one dingle. But then you have to cater for a completely different audience when you go and do your lightning talk, because then, they may not know what a 4 hickey and a do-wongle is going to be. So you're going to have to, say, well, this is a thing, and it will calculate the routes from between all these places. Also coming back as a tutor this year, tutoring the first years, you have to, figure out a way to explain all these concepts to somebody who probably never even thought about them before and may not even have an interest in knowing what they do. They just thought, give me my mark, I want to go. And you've got to somehow get through to explaining it. I have a feeling I may have just rushed through everything. Oh yeah, and while we were making this, massive system, we had constantly think, well, who's it going to be for? It could be for Joe Bloggs down the road who makes little miniatures and then drives out in his van on a Sunday and delivers them to everyone, or it could be someone like the Royal Mail who has, a massive network of trucks and vans and people with pushchairs and stuff, handing in letters through the door. And so you had to make sure that it could fit either role. You had to make sure that it could, easily scale to lots of destinations and lots of different routes. And so there was an awful lot of research involved. Well, you know, what are these routes? You know, how many packages do they have to get from Cardiff to Newport on Sunday? And I want to go through that. Yeah.